Pues muy bien, pues vamos a arrancar nuestro webinar, nuestro Latam Series de este mes, en donde, pues como cada mes ya nos vamos conociendo y vamos armando comunidad, y eso creo que es algo muy importante. Veo aquí a nombres, ¿no? Porque no nos vemos las caras, pero nombres conocidos, desde Chile, desde México, de Colombia. Entonces, pues bienvenidos a todos, Alejo, Carlos, Luis, todos los que están por acá. Yo soy Enrique Suárez, soy el Regional Chair, Co-Regional Chair de México, y bueno, muy contento de estar hoy con ustedes otra vez.
Bueno, como lo comentó Enrique, yo también hago parte de Fibree, estoy como Regional Chair en Colombia, pero también soy miembro del board de Fibree a nivel global. Como lo hemos venido presentando, pues Enrique y yo hemos tenido una experiencia también en tecnología, y desde hace ya algunos años hemos estado muy comprometidos en el tema de blockchain con el real estate. Entonces hoy nos complace más que todo compartir mesa con ustedes, y vamos a anunciar qué estamos haciendo en Fibree. Fibree publica, y Fibree tiene 3 misiones: educar, comunicar y apoyar o asesorar o dar consultoría. Esto nos lleva a publicar un reporte, como lo comentó Enrique. La versión 2021 fue en español y ahora ya estamos trabajando en la versión 2022. De nuevo, como lo comentaba Enrique al principio, esta es una industria que está adoptando este tipo de tecnología, que se está transformando muy rápido.
Quisiéramos también, como cada webinar, invitarlos a nuestros próximos webinars, ¿no? Perdón, déjenme lo regreso, para que apunten las fechas, y para que también pues le vayamos dando seguimiento al reporte de Fibree, que es nuestra base para estos webinars. Pero bueno, tenemos programados mayo, junio y julio, en donde vamos a estar platicando sobre el poder de la propiedad, o de la propiedad como tal del inmueble, el crowdfunding y la tokenización como alternativas de financiamiento, y qué es mejor, si juntos utilizar crowdfunding y tokenización o separados. Y en julio vamos a estar hablando de la comunidad Fibree en Estados Unidos y en Canadá, y cómo está evolucionando en estos dos países que al final pues vienen a conformar América, y tienen pues una gran influencia en todos nuestros países, ¿no?
Bien, Fibree es una organización que nació en el 2018 en Europa, en Ámsterdam, y desde ahí se ha venido expandiendo hacia regiones en el Asia, en Norteamérica, en América Latina, por toda Europa igualmente, y alguna presencia en el África. Como lo comenté hace un momento, la misión y el rol de Fibree es educar, comunicar y asesorar o apoyar gobiernos o empresas privadas que estén adoptando esta tecnología. Un ejemplo concreto fue lo que anunciamos recientemente, en el cual Fibree está apoyando el gobierno de Ecuador en un tema de registro de tierras, y estaremos anunciando nuevas noticias también.
Queremos agradecer a nuestros patrocinadores con los cuales llevamos a cabo este webinar: a CBRE, que es nuestro patrocinador global, a Mountex, Fibree Latam, a Colombia PropTech, a México PropTech, a la Cancham, que es la Cámara Nacional de Comercio de México y Canadá, a Citizen y a Stereo TV. Y llegando al punto de arranque ya de este gran tema, estamos muy emocionados y muy contentos de tener a Federico Garaventa con nosotros. Él es Regional Chair de Fibree en Italia. Y bueno, vamos a platicar con él un tema súper interesante, que es el de los impuestos, los tax benefits o los beneficios fiscales. Vamos a pasar a hablar en inglés con Federico. Y so Federico, welcome very much and welcome to our series, and please, if you can introduce yourself, and then we can start talking about the article.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting. I'm sorry I can't stand a conversation in Spanish, so you have to deal with English, but in our blockchain world, it's quite common nowadays, and we all have to deal with English. So I will try to do my best. Thank you for inviting and allowing me to try to contribute to today's workshop. The main reason I was invited for is because I published an article on Fibree Global Report 2021 about the tax credit system in Italy and the tokenization of those credits and the effect that had on the construction markets and the finance in general. I am the regional chair in my region, which is Genova, Liguria, in the northwestern coast of Italy. And of course, I'm in close relationship with all the Italian chairs. We are 6 chairs in Italy right now. And my main job is working as a freelance professional, as a project manager in real estate and construction business operations. So the funding of such operation is of course of paramount importance, and that's what drove me to get involved into blockchain development and study, apart from the fact that I am such sort of technology addict, so I studied it for leisure, for passion too. But in this case, the matching was perfect between what I love to study and what I needed for work. The main purpose, of course, is the tokenization of the asset in real estate, and this is yet to come in many ways. But last year, 2 years ago, the Italian government promoted strong laws about the system of tax credit to incentivize the investment into energy savings project and anti-seismic work and revamping of buildings in the construction sector. They had a lot of money to spend from from European Union. It was of course a project shared with all the European partners, but the Italian government, which usually suffer from a lack of cash, quite chronic, pushed very hard on the system of tax credit subsidization. That is a sort of financial trick. The taxpayer makes some expenses. If those expenses are investment in the direction that the government wants, in this case, the main branch was energy saving revamping of buildings, they will give you back some money, but instead of giving back money, they give you tax credit. That means that you can avoid paying taxes for a certain amount in the future. The strongest measure was 100 or 110% of the expenses to be cashed over a 5-year span. So it was quite quick as a recovery from the investment. What happened? Mainly the bank system sustained it. I mean, people used to invest the money, make the works. Typically the contractors cashed the invoices directly in the banks. And the banks were, the money provider for the whole system. The case study for my article was a company, an Italian company, a Swiss Italian company, which was able to transform the tax credit into a token based on the Bitcoin blockchain. They are sort of Bitcoin fans. They, that the blockchain world is almost split in two between people who believe only in the blockchain of Bitcoin and people who also consider altcoins as useful or at least worth considering. Those are Bitcoin fanatics, so they all use the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, and they are able to transform this tax credit into a token, which then can be exchanged quite freely between almost every taxpayer in the system, in the nation, in Italy. This was a very interesting case because it had some peculiarities worth studying and commenting. First, the blockchain is seen by most governments as a sort of dark side of the force, a force which is born to be disruptive, to go against the central powers against the authorities as a concept, while in this case, the blockchain helped the government to reach its goals and worked better than the traditional system, which is credited by the banks, which means debt. I mean, as long as you don't finish the works and the credit becomes, let's say, complete, you have a credit for a bank and you are in debt with the bank. So it wasn't, it wasn't ideal. The ability, the capacity to be able to tokenize the credit and sell it at once was a revenue from a sale, not a debt. So it was a better system than the traditional. Traditional was born a few years before, but the traditional one. So in this case, the blockchain showed that technology is almost neutral. Technology is not bad or good. Technology is a platform, is a tool. It's the man who uses it who can orient it and go in a direction or another. In this case, the blockchain was very, very, online with the governance goal, and this is a case worth considering. But what was more interesting was another question. If we make out a token from the money of taxes we are expected to pay in the future years, question was, are we printing money actually? Because are we printing money that are not yet existing? So the monetary mass, is it increasing? Well, since the time I wrote the article, things happened. A year passed over, and now I think the answer can be yes, definitely yes, because two main things happened. First, this kind of tax credit generated a huge market for fiscal frauds. There was a lot of scamming. Organized criminality exploited it. A few months into the system, our revenue service claimed for like 10 billion euros of fiscal frauds. And this urged, I think the figure is a bit overestimated, but it was a lot of money for sure. I felt it in the system, something was going wrong. And this helped the government to modify the law in a restrictive way, limiting the number of exchanges that this tax credit could be sold from among counterparts. But above all, we all saw that all these potential credits were already seen as money from the contractors. So the customers ran to start new projects. The contractors within 1 year were overbooked of contracts. They started to raise prices to allow for a new project to be acquired by them. And so the world of construction in Italy already was in full inflation, 2 digits, 1 year before the inflation started. Now in Europe we have a problem of inflation which is triggered by many events that are probably outside the border of our state. You can imagine the war, the printing of money by the central banks. But anyway, our construction market was already in full inflation run 1 year ago. Because the effect was exactly the effect you would have putting a lot of liquidity in a system, and so all the players of the system ran to start new projects, which was also a bit on the side of the moral hazard, because when a project is paid by the state at a rate of like 90 or 100%, the evaluation of the project, of the expected outcomes, is a bit pulled by the money which are apparently falling from the sky, as we say here. So yes, actually they were printing money. And in printing money, and despite forcing some limitation, now we can, this tax credit can be sold only 3 times between counterparts, then they have to be discounted for taxes or sold to a bank. but within the construction system, the construction chain, they will already consider money. I mean, nobody had problems in paying subcontractors selling or releasing those credits. So this was very, very interesting. On the same platform, there was something else which was worth of noting. Nowadays, using crypto or blockchain tools is still a sort of elitist game. I mean, you need some skill set that are not still shared by everyone. Above all, people beyond or close to the digital divide, let's say boomers, say something which is of general knowledge by this, are a bit, I mean, they are not still familiar or at ease with such a system. Owning a wallet and being able to manage your own private keys is still something about, I mean, it's not frequent today. To move on, we have to see which direction we will take. One direction will be to outsource the managing of those private keys to third parties, which will provide you services to be able to use them. But in my opinion, this kind of direction, it's quite the opposite of the goal, the purpose the blockchain was born for. The other direction is to work on much, much better interfaces. I mean, after all, people keep pushing buttons on the phone or device without having a great knowledge of what is happening behind the screen. I mean, none of us is able to build a radio, to say one. So I found this tax credit website very interesting because it was all the same as the web portals of the banks, where you had to upload a bunch of paperwork to be able to get those credits. But the interface was just the same as the banks used. Actually, most banks outsourced this, the management of the credits to mainly Deloitte Touche and PricewaterhouseCoopers. So those were websites where you had a sort of familiarity in using it, and the tax credit portal was just the same. That means that the user didn't need to acquire new skill set or new competencies to be able to benefit from the blockchain technology behind it. Anyone could upload the portal, do all the compliance required by the system, and he did not even need to know anything about Satoshi Nakamoto or the disruption probably brought by Bitcoin. He was just a user. The interface was just the same, and this is something I think that it could be food for thought for the future, to bring the blockchain and its potential to everyone.
Federico, yes, and I think it's a great case, you know. And as you mentioned, we've seen, if we separate a little bit the all the passion from blockchain and Bitcoin, we can see blockchain how here is serving the construction companies, get the tax benefits, the government do it in a more efficient way, and also the end user itself applying for them and maybe buying, right? So yes. It's like the technology, as you mentioned, helping, you know, all the partners to make it faster. Of course, as a new technology, it's still evolving, and it was I think it was so successful that they start trading so much, you know, that it was like printing money and inflation and everything go out of control a little bit. But the use case, it's really nice, and it's still using, right? The government is still using it, but now more regulated on behalf of how many times you can sell the tax credit, right?
Yes, it is still up and running. And when the government introduced the new limitations, it wasn't a one-day event. They announced the limitation, and then it took like 2.5 months to see the final version of the law. What happened was that all the banks freezed I mean, they were frozen, they stopped paying credits. So the whole construction market in Italy had no liquidity for like 3 months, while them using this tokenization system, they had just one exchange at the end of the chain, and so they kept working even when all the major banks were frozen. So there was a great proof of reliability and operability of this technological solution.
Okay.
Federico, I have another question. You mentioned in your article that in Italy, almost 70% of people or residents own their homes. And you were relating that rate to energy efficiency and renewal of the assets. How do you see the same case that you are sharing with us today in a way that we apply that rate in a different way, where it's 70% of the people in Latin America, they don't own a home, and 30% are owners? Do you think that the fact that the real estate and developers can build new assets or deliver new properties, it's a market that is enough attractive to deploy this kind of examples that you are giving today?
I think that there are very different markets, because when most of properties are owned by professional companies to be rented, the professional companies have a business approach to the problem. They have some cash or funding ability. They see on a more far horizon. They can plan ahead the maintenance of the building. The problem here in Italy is that having more than 70, maybe 72, 73% of people owning their own home, but most of them are flats, apartments in condos. They never find the planning ability or the funding among all the members of the condos to be able to perform major renovation works. And this is kind of keeping plastered caster the Italian market. That's why it seems crazy that the government put on the table like 100 or 110% of the expenses, but it makes sense in this case because the condos aren't able to move a single thing without such kind of funding. If the general contractor is able, like we are doing right now during this time, to be able to go to a condo assembly and tell them, just give me the contract, you spend nothing, I will renew the whole building, let me do my job, you have a chance to get a yes from the assembly. If you ask them €1, it's another game, it's another league, and it's very difficult to get things done. Apart from, main properties in Milano, in Rome, the big condos with wealthy people, most of the Italian construction stock is almost stuck in the past, cast in the past, and not moving an inch without a full funding of the renewal, the revamping works.
Okay, it's I still, it's part of how the technology has been evolving and helping on the user face. Or you were telling us at the end about how the user experience was, very seamless for the people filing for the taxes. How do you see the technology, being more the absorption of the technology into day-to-day lives and not, people into blockchain?
I think we have a choice in front of us. I mean, are we going to design system usable to everyone? That means older people too, or are we going towards a real divide where, for example, my mom, which is 80 years old, will never be able to be allowed to access these kind of tools? It's a kind of battle. Of course, my mother has a remote banking, which I have the keys. I do everything for my mom, like other older parents. I mean, we have to understand if, and I'm afraid the answer will be yes, there really is a digital divide. As long as the digital divide is, watching funny stuff on YouTube is a problem. If the digital divide separates people able to use money or not, that's a different problem. And I think we are going to discover that there is a digital divide, and the digital divide, as we call it now, is not yet but the peak of the mountain we are going to face. So the work on the user interface is going to be of paramount importance, in my opinion.
But very interesting what you mentioned. I was very curious when you start your article talking about paper money, because when we talk about paper money, we are related to the first bank in the world, if I'm not wrong, it was created in Italy. I think maybe it was Monte Paschi. And how do you see the role in between that transition? Because when we talk about real estate, construction, investments, we're talking about fiduciaries. So how do you see that new role where technology basically, it's not going to replace, but it makes more efficient, and it has properties into the code itself, like custodians, like KYC, MAL, and a whole bunch of new things of features that can sometimes make more efficient than the paper money as we know. How do you see that evolution?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, I'm no friend of banks, as probably a lot of people involved in blockchain or Bitcoin projects. But apart from the sitting on the money and exploiting the position, maybe banks can do something useful even. I mean, in Italy, our construction companies and development companies are of middle to small dimension. Apart from maybe 10, 12 main national player, which usually build only in Milan and Rome and not in any other place in the country. Most companies are small to medium, and anyway, most of them are still family owned. So with no shared governance, the funding is, still managed in a artisanal way. What's the problem? I can even tokenize and fund a development project, issuing token to people. Problem is, my company, my project has the tools to present itself on the market by its own. How is it perceived by the market? I used to own a family company till a few years ago. It worked over a span of 3 generations of the family. We were considered among the best and most reliable in the city. It's quite a big city, Genova. I don't think we were ever been able to step onto the market with our faces, our brands, and issue a token, expect someone to buy it. Because players has to have a minimum size. To be able to exploit the potential of the token, I think the corporate dimension is a minimum, it's a request. If the market is made up of smaller companies, and many countries in Europe do share this kind of problem, you need someone to intermediate with the market, with the financial market too. So maybe the banks in the future will be able to provide such kind of services. For example, on the performer bonds, about the completion of the construction phase of the operation, most companies aren't able to offer enough warrants or guarantees to the investors. So I think that the financial entities like banks will help companies to interface with the market. The smaller companies which are not of corporate dimension, but of course are just speculation. Nobody knows how things are going to evolve. I think it will be this kind of evolution will be much slower than some of us expected like 4 or 5 years ago. But of course, it's unstoppable. It will happen for sure. And maybe over this span of years, banks and financial institutions will find a way to provide services, and maybe the market will not be so disintermediated as we think now.
It's very interesting that one of the main promises of blockchain and of course, you know, the cryptos is the accessibility for people. And I think we've thought, and I don't know, I think there has to be an intermediary because it can be peer-to-peer 100%. I don't know again if the banks are going to be, but I think here's another element that comes into play, that it's the communities. Because as you mentioned, the community, the small companies, the small construction companies, regional or small medium companies building in the different cities, maybe they can unlock the power of their communities to finance their projects. Not like in a going to the whole market or trying to sell to different investors, but how do you see like a community in let's say Genova funding a project in Genova, that it's for, you know, for the city. Of course there has to be some returns and everything, but don't you think that will be, the intermediary is more not a bank or a great institution, but another small company or startup financing these kind of deals?
I would love to see it happens, but I'm not sure it will happen. I mean, right now, what we see is that size matters. I mean, people tend to be more confident with big entities, yeah. And probably this will push our small companies to, you know, to aggregate, to get together, to make consortium and maybe become bigger companies. But I mean, right now I'm talking about the Italian market in specifically way. We have a big problem about the governance of the companies. Most of them are, as I told you, family owned, and this is a step, an obstacle we are still making. It's hard to overcome, really. Anyway, I would love to see it happen, as you told you. I mean, using the token for a community to finance something. I even launched a project 2 years ago in Rome, because they were getting ready to celebrate the centennial or something. I don't remember what was going to happen. And I proposed to issue a token. Maybe it was a bit ahead of its time as a project, but I started to find someone from the institution to listening to me. So maybe it will happen. I think at some point there will be a reaction. I mean, how can you fund a project, a local project from a community, disregarding local authorities? It's not so easy in our regime to keep the two dimensions separate, split between them, and this is going to be a problem because you know, our lawmakers aren't eager to get this I mean, easily accomplished. Right now they are still on the defensive side, trying to limit the phenomena, or try to understand how to, I mean, disinflate the danger as they see it. So I would love to see it happen, but I'm not sure when we will see it happen.
Great. Okay. Maybe I have a last question. Can you please share a little more details about how do you see the connection in between the companies and the government? Do you see from your experience in the pilot that you have in Italy that it brings efficiency? You know that in many governments it's always a cash problem, how we collect more taxes. And there is no secret that in every single country there is no always 100% of taxpayers. Do you see like something related like a token, for example, for social housing? Or as Enrique was explaining, like an incentive to communities that becomes like tax credit and things like that? It's something is happening. And how do you see that bridge? It's something that you see soon, or it's something maybe too challenging?
Well, we already have some project about funding the social housing with some kind of tokens, and the same company I refer to is working also on sort of social tokens within some community boundaries to to start to capitalize on tokens, but I'm not too sure it will work. I mean, there is a point when the government tries to transform it in a centralized currency somehow. And I don't think this will be able to happen in a, let's say, peaceful way. There will need to be some kind of disruptions at some point along the way. I'm not overly optimistic about the lifespan of the Western democracies. I mean, I think we pulled a bit too much the rope with welfare, debt, and money printing. So maybe our question will survive the government itself in some kind of scenario I have in mind. So I mean, I think the things will just happen. I don't think will be a whole control the process. Maybe at some point things just will happen. I mean, somewhere the government will not be able anymore to maintain the streets. And so people will say, okay, let's maintain our streets. We need it. We have holes in the street. We have to maintain it and pay the contractors. Maybe they will use a token, but maybe it will not be done in accordance with the government. Maybe not. I mean, I expect things will happen in the next few years, and we will be here to see them happen. And not everything will be good, I'm afraid of.
Enrique, we have a very funny conclusion. Maybe we go back to the Romans' time.
For sure. So is there, just opening up a little bit for any question that anyone on the of our audience has? Si tienen alguna pregunta, por favor, la pueden poner en español o en inglés en el chat, y con gusto se la pasamos y la traducimos a Federico. It always came to me or comes to me when talking with all the different Fibree members that all around the world we're all struggling in the same way, trying to find better ways of use the technology, having the governments, because I think it's a global situation where they are on the defensive part still. And but it's really interesting how technology has gone 100 miles faster than governments, and in all around the world is this struggle trying to make things work and to really bring it down. I think they realize that it's not a trend, blockchain and the crypto space is not a trend anymore. It's here and it's going to stay. So now we're going to start seeing a little more of work be done on the government part.
I see it split into two halves. I mean, it's a new tool which can be used to make all tricks in a better way. Mm-hmm. And this maybe to some extent will be be done together with the government or seen as with a favorable way by the authorities. But it's also new tools to make new tricks. And maybe these new tricks will be the part the government won't like very much. Maybe. I hope so.
No, totally agree. Perfect.
Which means
so
that we congrats our followers and audience, because we are early days on this. I've been watching some statistics recently, and we are at the same time where internet was like being deployed and going to mass market, but it's still very, very few people. As you mentioned in your comments, Federico, it's very light on this topic. There's few people have deep knowledge about this.
Well, when I ran my family company, I happened to be among the leaders in the Contractors Italian Association at a national level. So I had the chance in the early years, like 15, 16, to talk with my fellow entrepreneurs and talk them about this. Oh, well, was like, you know, dog barking. I had wide eyes looking at me. And most people pulled out the calculator and tell me, okay, but how does it cost? What does it do? Okay, no, stop it. It's a bigger picture. Try to understand what's going on. I mean, from a business side, it's still something which is seen yet to come. It's not seen as a factor in the market yet. Probably, you know, again, corporate companies have also resources to study the future, to understand trends, to anticipate events. The smaller the company, the closer the horizon of the management is. And my feeling is that our fellow entrepreneur horizon is very, very close right now. So I'm still seeing, I mean, I have almost to justify myself when I talk about blockchain. I say, no, but I also do a normal job, don't worry. I also do a project management because I'm not, you know, some kind of esoterist, you know, disruptor. But when things happen, they can also happen fast. I mean, you know, we've seen the internet, what is giving us, you know, the social, the apps. When something becomes mainstream, it will be accepted quickly. I don't see it happening within, like, you know, 1 or 2 years from now in Italy at a business level. Maybe later on, I hope so. I'm working for it and towards it. But we are still a back behind, in my opinion, from a cultural standpoint.
Totally agree, and this is you know why we share, and I think Fibree is a great community where we are learning from each other, and I think we have the same objective of bringing this technology to really be have some use cases on the business world, and this absorption that will disrupt the world that we have. So we want to thank you very much, Federico, for your time, for being here with us. I think it's incredible again to see how, you know, it's evolving all around the world, the technology. I think we share that we are not there yet, but I think we are moving forward. That's the important thing, that it's moving, maybe not as fast as any of the ones that are on this call would like. But it's part of this disruption.
Okay, it was my privilege, my pleasure. Thank you to you.
Yeah, it was very good to have you as a guest, Federico. And I think we were approaching a different topic, Enrique, like talking about the taxes, the government, how the government can work in hand to hand with construction development and real estate. So that's just another fact about how Fibree is educating, communicating, and helping the adoption on this transition.
Exactly. Okay, well, let me share my screen again. As always, and I'm going to switch to Spanish, pero como siempre los invitamos a que descarguen el reporte en español de Fibree, en donde pueden encontrar el artículo de Federico, así como muchos de los artículos o todos los artículos que hemos comentado aquí, los que vendrán. También invitarlos el 3 de mayo a nuestro próximo webinar, que será el Series number 7, el 7, y a invitarlos a Fibree, a nuestra plataforma, a que se unan a la comunidad. Y bueno, como Andrés lo comentaba al principio, con grandes sorpresas. Andrés, si quisieras comentar, pues yo creo que vale la pena tanto lo que está sucediendo en Ecuador como nuestro nuevo plan de replicar, ¿no?, nuestros webinars en portugués ahora con el equipo, pues de Brasil específicamente.
Sí, como lo comentamos, pues no es indudable que Brasil hace parte de la región, entonces ya estamos trabajando para que este formato pueda ser también y tenga difusión en portugués. Entonces invitamos a la comunidad de Brasil para que nos unan. Entonces estamos ya trabajando internamente en Fibree Y de nuevo reitero, como tú lo comentas, la invitación para que la plataforma sea el lugar de encuentro. Estamos constantemente agregando contenido y pues luego de haber leído el reporte y tener la oportunidad de tener estos invitados especiales, los invitamos de nuevo a que lo compartan y que nos hagan llegar sus dudas, si ya sea a través de estos webinars o a través de la plataforma. Nos pueden encontrar, Enrique y a mí, estamos aquí muy dispuestos a poder apoyar a través de toda la región las iniciativas que tengan o los nuevos proyectos que ustedes consideren que Fibree puede dar apoyo. Gracias de nuevo a todos por el tiempo y por seguirnos.